Hey everyone, I am Jay Nidara, aka Spidey Fan 101, and I am here today to talk about episode 6, aka the season 1 finale of the Miss Marvel show. Now, as you all know, I gave up doing reactions on the show because the show was getting to be so unbelievably bad that I just couldn't do it anymore. And there was a time where I was watching this show, episode 5, and episode 5 wasn't good either. I was literally just like, okay, like, this is everything that I hate about modern day adaptations. This is literally, like, for me, this show was the last Airbender, was the modern day last Airbender. It was the modern day Dragon Ball Evolution. Like, it was that bad to me. But, and I had no faith that this finale would be any good. But, I am pleasantly surprised to say that this episode was the return to form that I wanted to see. Now, it's not perfect. I still had issues with this episode. I mean, not as many, like, painful issues that the other episodes did, but I did still have issues. But overall, but count made time to save button in this video. I think that this episode was the return to form that this show needed. Like, shame it was in the last episode, but you know, it's good nonetheless. Now, again, this is gonna be spoilers. So if you haven't seen this episode yet and you don't want to be spoiled, just, you know, watch it and then come back. So, yeah. I guess I'll start with the things that I disliked first, and then I get to the things that I liked. To do a little bait and switch on you. Now, like I said before, I did not like the direction this show was going in at all, because, like I kept saying, like a broken record in my reactions, the whole subplot involving the culture and Karachi, I think was fine, but it was not in the right place. Like, if, in my humble opinion, again, I'm still doing my layout, so that's gonna come later. I'm not gonna share full details because, you know, the details will be in my layout. But, in my humble opinion, like, I wouldn't do Karachi and the whole well, you could still do the culture thing, but I wouldn't do the Karachi stuff until, like, season 3, to where you can dedicate the whole season to Karachi. Like, there's no need to rush. There's no need to go, like, episode by episode, just wasting time that they didn't have. You could just dedicate a whole season to Karachi, and it'll be great. I mean, and then you could get Red Dagger right, and stop taking so many stupid liberties with. But anyway. You know, I didn't like the direction that the show was going in, but ultimately, I thought that this episode did a wonderful job. Well, it did a decent job of tying all the ties that they could in a somewhat satisfactory way. Because there's no escaping it. Characters like Bruno, Nakia, Zoe, they should be the characters right next to Kamala that get the most amount of development. And I will never forgive this show for just abandoning them just to tell some story that didn't need to be in this show. I will never forgive this show for that. Especially because there was so much promise with Nakia. Nakia, for what little quote unquote arc she had. I thought she was the best part of this show. Like, her iteration of Nakia was so spot on and it was so good. And literally, like, she is the only person in this show. Well, not the only person, but she's one of the people where I'm like, okay, whenever I envision Nakia outside of the comics, I will definitely be seeing Yasmin Fletcher in my mind. Like, she did a really great job as this character. The guy that played Bruno, again, I thought he was fine. He was decent. Honestly, I didn't notice it until a friend told me, but he had a lot of Tom Holland energy. Like, literally, like, there were so many times throughout the show where he had like those Tom Holland mannerisms where I was just like, this dude's trying to be Peter Parker. When Bruno Corelli is not Peter Parker. But, you know, he was good. But I would have, you know, next time, have the long hair. You can't be Bruno without the long hair. It's impossible. But yeah. And I did not like that Bruno was not the one to make Kamala's suit. Because in the comics, Bruno was the one to make Kamala's suit. But in this, it was her mother that made the suit. Which is fine, you know, for this iteration of the character, it makes sense that her mom was the one to do it. But to me, I just would prefer it if it was Bruno. So yeah. Then Zoe was a nothing character in this show. She had absolutely no plot in this show. And that sucks because Zoe is such a great character in the comics. As someone who has seen her go on her journey, who is still seeing her go on her journey, and even the newest comics, you know, she is such a great character with such a great story. And she was nothing in this show. And, you know, in this episode, they allude to Zoe starting to like Nakia, and they start to get closer, which I wish that was built up upon, because in this episode it felt really rushed because there was no hint or anything that Zoe was even remotely into Nakia in the earlier episodes or anything like that. But in the comics, literally, we see it not at the beginning, but like after Secret Wars happens and she has her epiphany and things and she changes, you know, she starts to form a bond with Nakia. They start to become friends, and then Zoe, you know, starts to like Nakia. And, you know, even though it doesn't work out because Nakia didn't like her like that, it made their friendship even more strong, you know? And Nakia and Zoe has such a great bond in the comics. But I feel like in this, it's super rushed. Now, it would be different if there's a season 2 coming. Because if there's a season 2 coming, then we can hopefully get more time to develop their relationship. But as it stands right now, it's a rush job. And I did not really appreciate that. I'm sure that, you know, if we saw more of them, they would have great chemistry. But, you know, it's just a rush job to me. I also don't like that her family knows. I don't like that everybody knows that she's Miss Marvel. Literally, like in the comics, like her identity is like the only people that know about it are Bruno, and honestly that's it. Like it's like they told us that Omni knew the whole time that she was Miss Marvel in the comics, and you know that was a cool reveal too. It was a nice reveal, but that didn't stay. After Secret Wars, that was kind of swiped under the rug. But then Abu knew, and then at the very end, around Time and Again, that's when she told Nakia and Zoe and Mike. And you know, but I just don't like that so many people know her identity. Like that just doesn't feel right to me. That doesn't feel right to me at all. And then we get to Kamala herself. Now, at the beginning of the show, I said that she was the most definitive version of the character in live action and in media. I don't stand by that statement because I feel like after episode 2, her character was progressively like scaled down, and she didn't really go through any developments or anything like that after season 2. She literally, her entire arc was literally put on the back burner just to do all that stupid stuff they did in the last 3 episodes. And to me, those last 3 episodes were all nonsense. Like, they took a complete detour and told a story that should not have been in this season. Rushed an entire story arc, that being Karachi, and absolutely ruining it by making it purely because of plot, and by ruining Kareem and the Red Dagger identity, and focused on characters that we shouldn't have been focusing on as much as they were. And ultimately, those 3 episodes, all they did was waste time that they didn't have. And those 3 episodes annoy me to no end. And I think it really affected the arc that Kamala went on, because I didn't feel like she was getting more like proud of her culture. I didn't feel like she was going through any of that, because the 3 episodes were not even about her. And that was super annoying. But yeah, in this episode, I thought she was good, you know? I think as far as this iteration of the character goes, I'm not gonna get into like a season review, because that'll be my next video. But I will say that my favorite parts of this iteration of Kamala Khan were in episode 1, episode 2, and this episode. Because in those episodes, she really felt like Kamala. She really felt like the Kamala that I know and love. Same with Nakia, same with Bruno. All these characters, even though they didn't get nearly enough spotlight as they deserved, felt like the characters that I know and love, that I read and still read in the comics. Like, it felt like them. But after the first 2 episodes, that just completely stopped. And I didn't even know what I was watching anymore. But then this episode came back and did a good job. A very good job. And with Kamala, you know, even her powers, like, you guys know I hate the power change. And I still hate the power change. But even when she finally says the magic word, she finally says embiggen, and she kind of embiggens. You know, it's still in that, still with the stupid bangle. But for what they did with it, I thought it looked pretty cool. For the first time ever in the show, I thought it looked pretty cool how they did it. But that does not mean that I want these powers to stay. No, I want them to leave. Bring Kamala's real powers back. And I will not stop saying it until it happens. So yeah. Kamala in this episode, you know, good. And I thought that her costume as well, speaking of the costume, I thought it looked better in motion, because in like set photos and promotional art, it just looked too MCU, like way too detailed, like especially when the costume in the comics is so simple. Having it be like this, like, it was just odd. But I did think it looked better in this episode than it does, like, not in motion, you know. And also, I never said, but the little, like, nod and homage to the Marvel Rising iteration with the sneakers instead of the boots, I thought that was cool, but still, give her boots. Alright? Yeah. And I just realized I forgot to talk about Cameron. Cameron, I don't like this iteration of the character. This iteration of the character is nothing. He has no depth anymore. He has no... There's nothing about him that makes me go, this is Cameron. And you know, it's not the version of Cameron that I would ever accept in media. And you know, it almost feels like they didn't know what to do with him. But honestly, like, you know, I did enjoy when they like alluded to him having that dark side in him and having the little wink and nod that he would become a villain like he does in the comics, but it doesn't come to fruition. So it was cool when they alluded to it, but it was disappointing when they backed out of it. But and then Damage Control, you know, they were fine, I guess. You know, like, this whole episode was a lot of fun. Like, them, like, Kamala and Bruno and Nakia and Zoe and Amir being in the school and fighting off Damage Control. I thought that was a fun segment. That was a fun group of scenes. I like that. It almost reminded me a little bit of Stargirl Season 2. Because in Stargirl Season 2, by the way, if you haven't seen my Stargirl Season 1 review, phenomenal show. I didn't review Season 2 yet. But I love Stargirl. It's in my top 10 favorite shows of all time. Go watch it. But in that show, there are like scenes where they would fight, like Courtney and the JSA would fight in like the school at night in like the cafeteria and things like that. That's what that reminded me of. I thought that was pretty cool. But I definitely believe that lady that got fired by Damage Control because she was doing too much, she's 100% becoming the inventor. There's no doubt in my mind that she will become the inventor. And, you know, if that's the case, you know, again, this show has a lot of potential to have a season 2. I know that, especially because I know her entire journey, and you can make like 15 seasons out of this if you really go through all the source material. But that's another issue that I have with the show that I will not get into here. I'll get into that in my season 1 review. But yeah. And then the ending. Oh my Giblets! That ending is wild. I'm still actually actively in shock by what they did. So, I've been on video talking about how, I've been begging, please be Inhuman, please! Bring back the Inhumans. You brought back Black Bolt in Multiverse of Madness. Why can't you do Medusa or Lockjaw or something? But the fact that Kamala in this universe is a mutant. Let me say that again. The fact that this version of Kamala is a mutant, that was insane. I never would have predicted, because a part of me asked the question one time, like, what if instead of making her Inhuman, they made her a mutant? But that was something that I asked myself, that I never once considered that as an actual option. That was just me like saying, what if this happened? But geez Louise, they actually made this version a mutant. I love that, because that opens up a whole new realm of possibilities. For one thing, that is 100% a tease that we could be getting her real powers, because as we know, mutants, evolve, they don't just stay, they develop their powers. So there's a chance that, her powers could develop in the Marvels, and we can get her, actual, polymorph abilities as, her mutant abilities, activating, which would be excellent. That would be so cool. I still can't wrap my head around the fact that this version of Kamala is a mutant. That's crazy. That's crazy, and that's awesome, all at the same time. That is probably the greatest creative liberty I have seen anybody take with a character that I love. Because literally, for this universe, it works. For this universe, it really works. Yeah, man. I legitimately cannot wait to see where they take this version of Kamala. And I'm happy to say that, because after the last 3 episodes, I was like, I never want to see this character again. But after this episode, not only do I want to see more of this iteration of the character, but I am genuinely curious, after this revelation, as to how they are going to proceed with this iteration of Kamala. I am very interested to find out how this will go. But yeah, that was so cool. And then the end credit scene, where it kind of, this end credit scene kind of confused me, because as someone who's read the comics, And as someone who sees that the title of this episode is called No Normal, which is the title of the first comic, and you know, in that first comic, when she goes through Terrigenesis, she shapeshifts. There we go. She shapeshifts into Carol, and seemingly, that's what happens here. Now, I genuinely believe that it is the case where Kamala has shapeshifted into Carol. Carol, just like in No Normal. But the way that she, because I don't know whether to call her Carol or whether to call her Kamala, because I don't know, but the way that she reacts to the situation at hand can honestly go either way. Because if it's Kamala shapeshifted into Carol, and she's like looking around and looks at herself, because she didn't really look at herself, she looked at her hands and saw that, you know, her hands were glowing, that you know, she was white now. And she looks at the picture of Carol and looks around the room, sees all the pictures of Carol, and she's like, oh, no, and runs off. So that could be, if we're looking at it as though Kamala shapeshifts into Carol, that could be her being like, oh, no, what happened? But if we're looking at it as somehow Kamala was transported to the place where Carol was, and Carol was transported to the place that Kamala was. First of all, what happened to Kamala then? What's going on? And then, for one thing, it is so good to see her again, because I've been on record saying, and back in the Golden Arc, that Captain Marvel is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it still is, even though, you know, it's not as great as I remembered it being back in the Golden Arc. I still love the movie very much, and I love Brie Larson. She's one of my real life heroes, and I love her so much, and I especially love her as Carol, so it's good to see her again. But, you know, it was like her hairdo was like super cool now. Like, I never really liked the short hair, so it's cool having the long hair again. And you know, and her new suit looks so much better. I don't mind the full body suit that she had before, but it was starting to get a little stale, her wearing it all the time. So it's cool to see that she has this new suit, and honestly, it kind of looks better than the one she had before. So, you know, I dig it. But her looking all confused and looking at a bunch of pictures of herself everywhere, literally she's like, no. So she's probably like, oh my goodness, where am I right now? So again, it could go either way, but I personally believe that Kamala shapeshifted into her. If that's the case, then that confirms that Kamala has the ability to shapeshift. That this iteration of Kamala still has the ability to shapeshift, which is amazing. I love that. And then it says Miss Marvel will return in the Marvels, which we already knew, but it's cool to see. And yeah, that was the episode, you know. Overall, I thought it was a really good conclusion, and I thought it was a really good conclusion for the time that they had left, and it was a fun episode overall. So, with a lot of promise for this iteration of Kamala's future. And now, again, I have to watch all 6 episodes again, and then do my season 1 overall review. But as it stands right now, I am cool having this iteration of Kamala, you know, be there on the side, while the real Kamala, aka 616 Kamala, is there doing her thing. And, we continue to see her story. The main story. But yeah, I'm cool with them coexisting, especially because the newest comic, Beyond the Limit, was a multiverse comic that went into the different versions of Kamala that exists out there, and it was a cool story. I won't get into it now. Maybe I'll make a video on it later on. But it was a good comic. But I'm cool with the coexistence. So yeah, overall, I'm gonna give this episode a 95 out of 100. It was actually, well, I guess I'll downgrade a little bit because, it did need more time. But then again, that was because the other the past 3 episodes sucked. I'll give it an 85. An 85 out of 100. And then with the power deduction, because I didn't mind the powers as much as I did before, I'll be just and give it an 80 out of 100. And this episode was definitely not the best one, because the best one was episode 1, but it was definitely my third favorite. Episode 1, episode 2, episode 6, and then the dog crap that was the last 3 episodes. So yeah, very good finish, and I will let you know tomorrow what I feel about the whole show once I do, or the whole season, because I don't really know what to call it, season, series, I don't know. But I'll let you know my thoughts on the whole thing tomorrow, after I rewatch the whole thing and I write my review. So yeah, I am Jaden Haidar, aka Spidey Fan 101, saying peace.